Let's speak to Robin Aitken, former BBC journalist, much experience in this world, Robin. Does this, firstly, let me just ask you basically, does this surprise you?
Unfortunately not. I mean, that's the depressing thing about this. We've had two stories this week. The one you mentioned about Hamas, and then the other one about Panorama doctoring a speech by Donald Trump to make it appear that he was encouraging people to go to the Capitol on January the 6th and fight that story. And that was of the two. I mean, I'm surprised by neither. And that's a depressing thing, Ian, because what it shows is the dishonesty of some journalists at the BBC. I mean, I have known, because people have told me, insiders at the BBC have told me there's a problem with BBC Arabic, and it's been there for years.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Let me, one thing that viewers should know about this is that if you are recruiting journalists in Arab countries to work for the BBC, the kind of people you'll be recruiting are highly educated, probably dissidents in their own country. These will be politically active people. It's very difficult, of course, for Anglo managers here in the UK to monitor exactly what's happening on BBC Arabic. This is not an excuse. I'm not making excuses, by the way, because I think that the BBC has been at fault in not properly managing that service. But actually, it's very clear from that leaked document that there has been a long-standing bias towards Hamas. There's been a long-standing anti-Israel bias within BBC Arabic. And I think that is plain for all to see actually now. And you ask, should heads roll? Look, heads never roll at the BBC, do they? I mean, when can you remember the last time you saw a head rolling down Portland Place?
Well, indeed. Well, a friend of mine who's who was a 30-year lifer at the BBC said you've literally got to commit second-degree murder to lose your job at the BBC, and even then you might hang on to it. The door's always open, you know.
Yeah, I know. That's the problem is, it's strange you should. Well, not strange, but I'm actually writing something just at the moment about. There's a green paper coming up about the BBC, the future of the BBC, because its license fee is bleeding at the moment. You know, it's losing thousands every week, people refusing to pay, people no longer wanting the BBC. So there's a question mark about the BBC's funding. That comes up for renewal in 2027 when the Royal Charter must be renewed. Now, there are a lot of people who say, scrap the BBC. Look, that ain't going to happen. You've got a government in charge at the moment, a Labour government, and basically you couldn't put a cigarette paper between the world view of this government and the BBC. In fact, that goes for the whole of what you might call left Britain. So the Lib Dems, left-wing Tories, the Labour Party itself, and anyone to the left of that. They're all going to find that the BBC is pretty congenial to their worldview. So don't hold your breath for the BBC to be scrapped. It ain't gonna be.
And it's interesting because we do seem to have had this. I mean, look, there's always been accusations that news organisations are biased for whatever reason, and of course there can be accidents and errors that happen in all areas, even in with very experienced journalists. I understand that, of course, because I've been there, and as you have, Robin. But what we seem to have here is some very serious breaches, and these aren't just a case that they mistitled the CEO or something. I mean, I look back to the Gaza documentary that turned out to be presented by a child who was the son of a terrorist, for goodness sake. I mean, I don't know, nobody can work out, who knows anything about our industry, can work out how that could have possibly happened. And similarly with the Trump thing, and I find that almost more mysterious because you know what it's like to put a package together or an extended piece for news or whatever. You don't do it on your own. You've got somebody there who's editing for you. There'll be a producer around. This is Panorama we're talking about. It won't just be looked at by a producer. There'll be an editor, and it's probably even has to be legaled as well. So there'll be a legal department that would look. There's several processes. How the heck did it get from there to there without one single person saying, this looks a bit iffy?
Well, Ian, you touch on absolutely the core of the thing. The point is that to manipulate a speech and quotes like that is it doesn't happen by accident. It's a perfectly deliberate thing. So the people in the Panorama edit suite would have had the raw footage. They would have decided that we'll cut from here to here, so it makes it look as though Trump is saying this when in fact he wasn't saying that. Look, lesson one, day one, when I started out as a journalist, it was probably the same with you. Look, if you're not going to be honest in your journalism, if you're going to manipulate people's quotes to make them say things they haven't said, you've ceased to be a journalist. You have become a propagandist. Look, this is absolutely it is absolutely the opposite of everything the BBC says it stands for. The fact that the BBC has the nerve to set up its BBC Verify, I might suggest this to you, Ian. Why doesn't BBC Verify have a look at Panorama's output? I mean, you know, if you can't trust the BBC to be trustworthy in the way that it treats the speeches of the President of the United States, what can you trust it for?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of...
This is intolerable. And I tell you what, so, I mean, as I say, I've been thinking a lot about this over the past couple of days because I'm trying to write something about it now. And my feeling is this, that the BBC isn't going to be scrapped by this government or probably by any other government because they all like having a state broadcaster, and how useful it is to have a state broadcaster, as the Tories found during COVID, because the BBC invited the government in and gave its airwaves entirely over to the government for the duration, and the government could say whatever it wanted through the BBC. That's jolly useful. Yeah. That is jolly useful. So don't expect the government to scrap the BBC, but this is the answer, I believe. What needs to happen is that the BBC's current spineless complaints procedure needs to be scrapped. What we need is an oversight body comprising of people outside the BBC who are going to be tough on the BBC, who are going to act speedily. And if something like this came up, this would now be in front of that committee, and they'd be saying, this has happened, he has to be sacked. Yeah. You know, it's as simple as that. If you want to restore trust in the BBC, you need a proper, tough oversight body, which is outside the BBC completely and is going to apply proper, honest journalistic standards. I mean, that's the answer.
Yeah, that's absolutely spot on. Listen, Robin, lovely to have you on again. Nice to speak. Robin Aitken, former BBC journalist of some note, and he worked there for a long time. He knows his way around not just that newsroom, but the whole world of journalism, domestically, nationally, internationally, and the like. And to hear him be that critical of an organisation that should be, I mean, it should be one of those things that we'd be so proud of, you know, like the previous Queen, our last Queen. It should be in that ballpark.